Parents continue to worry about the harmful effects of Wi-Fi in the classroom. Health Canada says Wi-Fi is risk-free, but why do some parents disagree, and some experts? We're going to talk with Carolyn Jarvis, a reporter with Global National, in just a moment. But here are some clips from one of her stories.
There are children getting sick, and I don't think it's worth the risk.
I really hate sending her to school, given the environment that she's in.
He would often complain of heart palpitations or chest pains.
I'd start getting headaches, foggy vision, and just all weirded out.
To expose my kids knowingly is very frightening for me.
For me as a parent, I find it incredibly frustrating and scary and sad that no one's even listening to the concerns of the parents.
Carolyn Jarvis is a reporter with Global National. She's been covering this story. And Carolyn, hi, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
Tell me what your reaction is, having covered the story. Are there legitimate concerns?
Well, I'm no scientist, so I'm not the person who's going to decide whether it's in fact scientifically based, but parents are certainly concerned, and it's certainly a very divisive issue. On one side, you've got experts who say it's absolutely safe, and you've got parents who claim that Wi-Fi is to blame. You can't deny the fact that these kids are coming home complaining of these symptoms. They say that they don't have Wi-Fi at home, and so when they come home, the symptoms abate. When they're home on the weekends, they're not symptomatic either. And their parents are pointing the finger squarely at the Wi-Fi in this case. One of the most simplest ways they want to figure out whether it is in fact to blame is to yank it from the schools or to turn it off for a period of time to see whether or not those symptoms ease. But thus far, no school board has permitted that to take place.
But aren't you exposed to Wi-Fi in all kinds of places? I mean, I'm damn sure I am right now.
Well, yeah, you are. The argument is that there exists a subset of the population that is what's considered electro-hypersensitive. So that means a very small number of people that react to very low levels of radiation. It's whether or not you buy into that theory that is the premise of this argument. In countries like Sweden, they acknowledge electrohypersensitivity as an illness. In Canada, by comparison, we do not. So if we acknowledge that this illness exists, that people can be made sick by exposure to radiation, then it could possibly be, in fact, a case to be made that Wi-Fi is making at least some of these children sick. And the experts who say that it is harmful aren't claiming that Wi-Fi is going to make everyone sick. Heck, I'm on an iPhone now, and I feel fine. But what they're saying is that it could be possible that some kids are getting sick as a result of this, and that we should be taking a precautionary approach as a result, just as we do with peanuts. If one kid out of 1,000 is allergic to peanuts, we yank peanuts from schools on the whole. So if one child is getting sick from Wi-Fi and exposure to this sort of low-level radiation, we should take the same precautionary approach here and remove it from schools. You can have it at home if you want, but not in a public place.
So, not in Starbucks, Wi-Fi's everywhere.
It is everywhere. And so the experts aren't saying that you should remove it, but that places where parents don't have an option to remove their children from, such as a public school, there should be hardwiring, meaning you can still have internet, you can still have the advanced technology that kids want and parents want for their education, but the alternative is hardwiring their computers to internet access. And what some communities are doing in Europe, there's 2 cities in France, they've removed Wi-Fi completely from all of their public buildings and all of their public schools for these very same health concerns. And they've gone to a fiber optic system, which there's no dispute is a faster system. So they're saying not only are we avoiding these potential health concerns, but we've got a superior system technology speaking.
What about costs? Is it more expensive, less expensive? What?
Yeah, fiber optic, no doubt, is more expensive, but they're saying it's the way of the future. So to get from point A to point C, let's just skip point B, skip going wireless, and avoid all these health concerns. And nobody has reached a conclusion as to whether or not Wi-Fi is causing these health effects.
But Health Canada is generally speaking the arbiter of these things. Health Canada says Wi-Fi is risk-free, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, point blank. There's no argument from their perspective. They're saying that Wi-Fi is safe, because it falls within their guidelines. They've got a set of guidelines that's called Safety Code 6. Anything below their threshold is considered safe, and Wi-Fi falls within this safe threshold. But here's the interesting development. There was a parliamentary committee, the Health Committee in Ottawa, that had a few sessions both in the spring and in the fall to examine this very issue. the effects of this low-level type radiation. And they came out with a report that they tabled in the House of Commons on December 2nd. And in that report, it said two things of significance. One, that we need to fund long-term studies, that not enough work has been done. And that's a really interesting admission by these parliamentarians. The second thing they've tabled is a recommendation that Health Canada create some sort of process, some sort of protocol whereby people who have these symptoms can report them somewhere and Health Canada can respond to them accordingly. Because right now, they're not being heard by anyone.
Carolyn, thank you.
My pleasure, Bill.
Carolyn Jarvis, reporter with Global National. We're going to talk with a mother who pulled her kids out of school over concerns over Wi-Fi, and I'm also going to open the phones and ask you for your calls, questions, comments on this topic. 604-280-9898, toll free 1-877-399-9898. You're with Bill Good on the Chorus Radio Network, and my phones are open to you. Over the past few years, Wi-Fi has become so popular that it's a selling point for hotels, a must-have for coffee shops, and a treat for anyone on BC ferries or even in public libraries. So why then have concerns been raised about Wi-Fi in schools? You heard Carolyn Jarvis, a reporter with Global National. She's done stories on this. Samantha Boutet pulled her kids out of a Maple Ridge school over Wi-Fi worries, and she joins me now. Samantha Boutet, hi.
Hi.
Why did you take how many kids have you got?
I have two children.
And you took them both out of school?
They're both out of school.
Why?
So in October, I actually saw the global report done by 16 by 9 looking at children across the country who were all exhibiting the same sort of symptoms that were being attributed to Wi-Fi in their school. And at that point, our own daughter had been having the same sorts of symptoms for about a year and a half. And so looking into it more closely, I discovered that one of the routers in the school was right on the wall of her classroom, and it's proximity to the router that sometimes makes these children reactive to this kind of microwave radiation. So at that point, I approached the principal and started doing research on my own. And we got an organization to come to our school and give a presentation on it. And after hearing the information that they presented on these health issues, we pulled our children out of school the next day because no studies have been done to date specifically examining health concerns to children, nor have any studies been done examining low-level, long-term microwave radiation exposure. And children are not mini adults. They're physically different from us. Their skulls are thinner. They're in a state of growth and biological development. And so the sorts of health standards that we have for adults cannot really be extrapolated onto children.
Now, you're a naturopathic practitioner, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You say there have been no studies, but BC's provincial health officer, Dr. Perry Kendall, says he's looked at the scientific literature, found a lack of evidence of any adverse health effects related to Wi-Fi. England's Health Protection Agency says people would need to sit in a Wi-Fi hotspot for a year to be exposed to the same amount of radiation they would get from a 20-minute call on a cell phone.
So that's just not true. The Wi-Fi base stations actually transmit constantly, so they give off a pulse of 10 beats per second. So what they're talking about there is a data stream. So that's what happens when your cell phone powers up and you talk on it or you make a call. So this is not the same thing. The beacon signal is going constantly and at full power constantly. So this sort of microwave radiation is bombarding these children's bodies and brains for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, the entire time that they're in school. And like I said, to date, there are absolutely no studies done specifically on children and having this sort of microwave radiation exposure.
So what kind of symptoms were your kids, were they both having them?
No, only one of my daughters was having them.
But you took them both out of school?
I took them both out of school because after I found out what I have so far found out, it did not seem prudent to allow either of my children to be exposed to this microwave radiation for another day. So, I mean, here's my concern. In 1999, the Royal Society reported to Health Canada that the long-term effects of non-thermal microwave radiation were unknown. At that point, they suggested to Health Canada that the exposed population be observed over a number of years and then document the health effects. This is the definition of human biological experimentation. No one has asked for my permission to experiment on my children in this way, and biological experimentation on children is, quite a it has a lot of rules around it, and so the school board and our country is contravening the Nuremberg Code, the Canadian Tri-Council Policy Statement, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of a Child by exposing our children to this sort of radiation that has no long-term exposure studies without asking for anybody's consent.
Let me take some calls. Rick, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. How are you? There's a lot to be said here, whether or not there should be Wi-Fi's in schools or not. And maybe there's a strong argument to pull them out of there, and I'd even go so far as putting in jammers for cell phones on them. But the bottom line, in this world with so many devices that people have, whether it's your iPod or your pad or your cell phone or, gaming machines, we're now in a world, and we've set ourselves up in a world that's going to need Wi-Fi. These devices don't have access, and you can't really plug in. A lot of them can't be plugged into wall units, into Cat 5 or Cat 6 jobs. And certainly fiber optics, although it sounds great, is great for long haul or point to point into buildings. But once you get there, it's got to be something that's going to be cost effective to the customer that's going to be supplying it. And you cannot have data ports sitting there that people can hardwire in. So we've gone past that. The horse is out of the barn. You can't close it now. Maybe we can focus on some smaller areas like schools and getting it out of there. But as of a global thing, I don't know about what your house is like. I'm all Wi-Fi, and it's very convenient.
I am too, and I'm sitting here in the radio station, and I will be this afternoon in the TV station. If I stop at Starbucks this afternoon, I'm going to be too. But I'm not 10 years old either, and I think Samantha Boutet is concerned about the effects that this may have on children more than adults. Is that fair, Samantha?
That is, yes.
Well, and that's where they should maybe focus on. Get it out of the schools and move it into computer rooms like they used to have, and it'll all be plugged in on the wall. And it might even help with the kids without not having access to the internet to goof around, on some side project that they're doing instead of studying. But
a lot of people want to speak to this, so I'm going to take a break and come back and get as many calls in as I can before the news to the top of the hour. Talking with Samantha Boutet, who pulled her kids out of a Maple Ridge school over concerns about Wi-Fi. Talking with Samantha Boutet, a mom, 2 little girls in Maple Ridge, so worried about wireless, Wi-Fi, wireless fidelity, that she pulled her kids out of school. How are they now? Have their symptoms gone away?
My daughter is feeling much better now since we have brought her home, thanks.
So what are you, homeschooling?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and you feel competent to do that?
Yes, I have set up, and we'll see how it goes in January. It's going to be a learning process. But
do you have options? Are there schools that don't have Wi-Fi?
No, and you see, this is part of the problem. As far as I know, every public school in the Lower Mainland has Wi-Fi, so if you are a parent who does not want their children to be exposed to this technology that has no long-term safety record, you have no public school option for your children.
Karen, good morning. Karen, hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My son is electromagnetically sensitive as well, and we discovered this long before we had ever even heard that it was possible. So I've had people say, "Oh, you heard about it, and you therefore fit your son's symptoms to what you heard."
How do you test for it?
Well, basically, we figured it out because we had a building biologist come in and check our home, and one of the things that she checked for was electromagnetic radiation in the home, and we found it was very high. We had Wi-Fi here. Mm-hmm. We were all up to date with all the latest, cordless phones and everything else.
Yep.
And we just unplugged everything for a few days, and he felt, probably 80% better than he had in 4 years. And that was when the light bulb went off. And so, we made this discovery at home, and now we know what the implications are for him when he's at school. And what your previous caller said about the horse being out of the barn, I completely agree. We are, unfortunately at that point, and it's difficult for kids like my own who have to make a choice. If he's going to go to the mall, he needs to run in and run out so that he isn't going to be made to feel ill by the duration of the time he's in there.
Can't go to a library, can't go to Starbucks?
Well, he can, but he's going to pay for it. He's going to feel it. And
how old is he?
He's 17, so
okay.
he's close to graduating. But his options for university are looking very dim at this point. And he's not just reacting to Wi-Fi. We know it's one of the things he reacts to, but he can have kids in his class next to him. A text message will come in for them, and he'll tell them, "Oh, by the way, you just got a text message," because he feels it.
Really?
Really. It's quite something to see, actually. And it's the choice thing. He, like I say, he's almost graduated, so we're lucky in that respect. But for all the other kids that are like him, what choice do they have?
Samantha, do we have any idea what percentage of the student population might be sensitive in this way?
So the countries that acknowledge this problem estimate that between 3 and 6% of the general population have this electromagnetic reactivity. So it is safe to assume that between 3 and 6% of the child's population in school in this province have it as well.
Heather.
Oh, hi there.
Hi.
I am the spokesperson and founder of Mothers Against Power Poles here in Tawasin. I've spoken with you before.
Yeah.
And I definitely concur with what all of the other callers are speaking about. Currently, there are no Canadian standards regarding EMF, which is electromagnetic frequency exposure, and the World Health Organization, they kept saying to us, or the Liberal government was saying to us that, just check out the World Health Organization. Well, those standards are from 1978, and right now, the EMF level at the Tawasin High School is running at about 85 milligauss, and standards across Europe and even the schools in Toronto are running at 2 milligauss. And so we, Mothers Against Power Poles is continuing we're trying to educate people about the dangers of chronic long-term exposure to electromagnetic radiation, and I definitely concur with what the other speakers are speaking about.
Heather, thank you. Samantha, thank you so much. Jessica.